Are we expecting a lot more people? Or is this roughly it?
Usually there's a handful more.
Okay, let's give it a couple more minutes then. Just going to give it until 5 past in case more people show up. Okay. So, welcome everyone. I'm going to be teaching you on this course from now on, except in 1 week when Megan Rose will come back. My name is Saumya Venkatesan. This is how you say my name. It's not the phonetic spelling. It's not written as it's said. My office hours are 3 to 4 on Mondays and in the Arthur Lewis building. Do you know my office number? Yeah, my office number is on the course page. Yeah? So do come if you have any questions, any clarifications you want sorted out. If you're very excited about something and you want to talk about it and further your understanding or knowledge, you're always welcome in the office hours. Okay? Have you guys been attending office hours? No? Okay, I'm going to urge you to attend because now the assessments are coming up and the more you engage, the better you'll do basically. Yeah? So just show up and you can talk about anything to do with the course that you want to. Okay, so we're going to talk about the mid-semester assessment today. None of you responded to the survey that I sent around asking if you had any specific questions or areas that you wanted me to cover. So I'm assuming that you're all fine, that you are just going to do what you need to do on the basis of what we're going through today. But as we go along today, if you have any questions at all, please raise your hand and just ask. There are no silly questions. There really aren't. So if you think, I don't get this, or I want a little bit more clarification, whatever it is, just put up your hand and ask straight away. Okay? Yeah? Okay. So you've had 5 lectures so far on this course. What are the areas you've covered in the anthropology of religion?
Practice.
Practice. Very good. Okay. Did you enjoy practice?
Yes.
Yeah? Good. Excellent. Okay. Is this not very good? You see that? Yeah? Okay. What else? Was there a subsection of practice that you also thought about? The verb form of the word?
Ritual.
Have you done ritual already? Have you?
It seems like
Well, the podcasts are up, so you might have listened to it. You know. So the verb form of practice, of course, is practicing. Right? So it's the present continuous verb form, and we'll think about that as well. What else did we do?
belief.
Belief, yeah. Okay. What else? I keep changing pens in the hope that one of them will be nice and bright.
Material.
Oh yeah, excellent. This one works. And what did you do alongside material religion?
Mediation.
Mediation, yeah. Anything else? You did something tricky about religion right at the start. What was that?
Definition.
Definitions. Okay. So, broadly speaking, these are the areas that you're going to cover in your mid-semester assessment. Now, you won't be expected to cover all of them. You have to select. Yeah? Because your assessment is a 5 to 6 minute voice thread presentation where you will speak in answer to a question. And one of the things that we're really looking for is how you choose from the things you've been taught to speak to the ethnography, and how you speak from the ethnography to one or more of these things. You might choose to do 2 things, but you will not choose to do more than 2 things because you don't have the time. Yeah? So we want depth, we want quality. You're not going to be assessed on the number of references. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So tell me something. You've all read Lerman. Tell me something from the book, something that struck you, and let's see how it speaks to one of these things. A vignette, some points that she's making. Anyone at all want to have a go? Yeah.
I found it interesting when she was talking about the reality lens and the pretend lens or plain lens and stuff, and how they kind of overlap.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if we were to think about that, she calls it let's pretend, right? Okay, which of these themes do you think that speaks to? Remember, it can speak to more than one. Yep.
I guess practice, you know, about how it's an individual practice. And it's like a method as well, of making God real.
Yeah, very good. Absolutely. Okay, so definitely they are actively doing something, right? When they are doing the let's pretend, when they go on date nights with God, when they have a coffee with God, when they lay the breakfast table or the dinner table or whatever it is, as if God were going to be a guest at their table, they are definitely doing something. So the lens of practice speaks very well to that. Yeah? So if you were going to answer the question, and let's look at the question. Okay. So if you were going to answer that question and you were going to pick practice as the thing, as the lens that you were going to focus on, yeah? Learning allows you to think in really interesting ways about practice. Right? There's very formalized kinds of practice in that book where people sit in tiny little rooms or in kind of isolated spaces and they do their journaling and they try and write down all the thoughts that they're having and then they try and figure out, is this from God or is this from me? And that's a form of practice. It's a very formalized form of practice. Right? But they also have much more playful forms of practice, such as the let's pretend, where they're blurring for themselves that line in the hope of opening themselves up more to the experience of God. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Can someone else think of something else from the book? Yeah.
Mediation.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, I was just going to go with the reality and it's mediation.
You want to relate this to mediation? Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Because it's using like prayer as a way to interpret reality as you know,
Yeah, very good. Okay, so it also speaks to mediation. And it does so because when we think about what mediation is, it's that attempt to build a bridge between the here and now and that which you want to reach, which is test or not? It's a test. Yeah. So mediation is really that attempt to build that bridge between what is here and now with something that you sense but you can't really access in some straightforward way, right? So absolutely, let's pretend, as well as things like the journaling, as well as things like attending the church and singing to God and laying hands on one another, all of these things form part of mediation. What's the instrument that we're using here as a mediating material? Well, they are trying to open up their minds for sure, yeah, but what are they doing? What is that instrument? What is the primary instrument in this kind of practice? Well, prayer is a medium for sure, so prayer is one medium that they're using. But importantly, they're using their bodies, right? Yeah, that's really what they're doing when they're saying, let's pretend I'm going to act as if God is sitting with me on this park bench, I'm going to act as if God is walking with me. I'm going to talk to God as if He were really there, and it's using your body. Yeah? So there's many media that are being used here. In the experiment and learn and runs, they're also using iPads as a form of media. Right? They're using songs, they're using the Bible. So there's a lot of media that are being deployed here to create that connection, that bridge between them and God. Yeah? So mediation is also a very good lens to think about the kinds of things that they're doing. Anything else? So if you were going to put both these concepts together to answer your question, then you would be saying something like, we can think about practice, the particular things that they do, in order to achieve that connection with God and to open themselves up to God. And that practice involves a diversity of media, because what they're really trying to do is build that bridge. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Now let's talk about something else from the book. Is there anything else that you remember that strikes you as interesting, puzzling? Should I run this out? Any more room? Yeah? Most lecture theatres where I teach have kind of 4 or 5 goals. A single goal is really aggravating. Anything else from the book that you remember? Yeah.
I was sort of thinking how that believers contemplate skepticism. I say that involves belief, and I found that interesting because you wouldn't usually consider associate skepticism with beliefs.
Very good. Yeah. So skepticism or doubt. Okay. So what's interesting about their doubt or their skepticism?
Well, you wouldn't normally think someone who would believe it. I think she said at the beginning, early in the book, sort of, usually we kind of talk about people who believe that religion is sort of have to be disassociated from like beliefs in science or whatever, and those ones are somehow separate. And what she's saying by exploring that, you realise they're not. That's a constant grappling these people have.
Yeah, absolutely. So belief here, and we know that partly from thinking about their own skepticism and doubt, so it's not a condition of either or, right? Either you believe or you don't believe, and that's that. What Lerman is showing us is, in fact, belief is really, really complicated. There are some things that they all believe, right? They all believe that God is present in the world, that God loves them. They have to keep telling themselves that this is a kind of core belief, but it's foundational, right, in that church. So where does the skepticism and doubts come in? What do they doubt? What do they worry about? Yeah.
They doubt whether it's actually God they're hearing.
Very good. So they doubt their own capacity for discernment, right? The basic idea that God loves them and is present in the world is something that they sometimes doubt, but they tell themselves, no, he is there, he's just not talking to me right now. That's what she calls dryness. And the whole community comes to help them get over it. But often they can't quite figure out, is this me or is this God? I'm feeling something, I'm hearing something, I'm experiencing something. Is it me or is it God? Yeah, that's at the heart of their doubt. It's about their own ability to work out whether it is God who is indeed speaking to them. So we can approach belief in 2 ways. Right? What is Durkheim's idea about belief? Does anyone remember? Why is belief so important for Durkheim? What was Durkheim obsessed with? What did he wake up thinking about in the middle of the night? Anyone at all? No? Not a soul was excited by poor Durkheim? Enough to remember him after 5 weeks? So the thing that Durkheim is really interested in is society. What is it that keeps a bunch of people together as if they belong with each other? And for him, religion is one of those things. It's a really important thing. And he divides religion into 2 things. One is beliefs, and the other one is rites or rituals. Right? So for Durkheim, you are a group that understands itself as a society because you believe in something together. Right? And the rituals that you do maintain that belief periodically. Does that make sense? Yeah? So if we extrapolate that to the Vineyard Church, then there is a fundamental belief that everyone in that church shares, more or less, which is that God is present in the world and God loves me. Right? They also have a further belief, that is the one that is really subject to that kind of doubt and skepticism, that God will speak to me. Right? Does that make sense? So all the rituals that they're doing, all the prayer practice, the various forms of mediation that they're doing are really to open themselves up to God. Right? It is based on that belief that if you can open yourself up enough, then God, you will experience God. Yeah? So in some sense, focusing on skepticism and doubt allows you to think about belief in two different ways. One is that foundational belief of that church. That's what makes that bunch of people what Durkheim would call a society. Right? They feel some kind of comradeship with each other. Yeah? Does that make sense? Not necessarily with every kind of Christian out there, because their form of Christianity is somewhat different to lots of other forms of Christianity out there. But they recognize themselves as a church. And they have a certain kind of sociality that is based on these foundational understandings. Does that make sense? Yeah? And up to that point, we can run with a Durkheimian analysis. But what is Durkheim not interested in? If he's definitely interested in society, what is he not interested in? What would you think of as the opposite of society? The individual. Yeah, absolutely. So Durkheim is not interested in the individual. And he just has no interest. Partly because he's trying to develop this new discipline of anthropology, and he thinks focusing too much on individuals is a domain of psychology. He doesn't want to go there because someone else is already doing that stuff. Right? But what kind of anthropologist is Lerman? How does she describe herself? What kind of anthropologist is she? Yeah?
Like a psychological anthropologist.
Absolutely, she's a psychological anthropologist. And so she's interested in that individual subjective experience as much as she is in the collective forms of sociality that maintain this church. Right? So essentially, when we think about belief, then we can start off by saying, well, yeah, up to a point Durkheim is right. This foundational understanding is what keeps these people together as a church, the kind of work that they do to build on this foundational understanding, to open themselves up to God. Yeah, up to that point, we can do a Durkheimian analysis. Does that make sense? But Lerman goes where Durkheim does not go, which is really to think about these individuals, their subjective feelings, their personal doubts, their worries, their anxieties, their hopes, right? And their capacities to open themselves up to God. So she takes belief somewhere else compared to Durkheim, which is really by focusing on what it does to individuals. Knowing that God loves them, knowing that God is in the world, and somehow working so hard to open yourself up. And then when He does come to you, it's almost orgasmic for some of these people, right? Those of you who read the book, there's that bit where the woman is saying, I felt God pinning me down, I felt His weight on me. They really feel it incredibly intensely. Yeah? And that is where Durkheim doesn't really go. Because his focus is on society. So what Lerman allows you to do is take belief into another domain, which is really that individual experience. Does that make sense? Yeah? Do you see how you might work with Lerman to really both say, yes, Durkheim is fine up to a point, but no, actually, she goes beyond him. Yeah? Now, one thing I'm going to tell you, which maybe you all already know, but maybe you don't, is use the book. And when I say use the book, what I mean is, you know what you've been taught in your course so far, right? So you ask yourself, is Lerman actually working with this person? These people whom I've been taught with, Geertz, Durkheim, Tyler, and so on, let's see if Lerman's interested in anything these characters have to say. And how do you do that? You look at the index. Yeah? So do people have a copy of the book with them? Yeah? Okay. So if you look at the index for Durkheim, there he is, Emile Durkheim, page 279. She only refers to him once on one page. Yeah? So what do? We go to page 279 and we see, what is she saying about Durkheim? Is she actually keen on Durkheim, or is she just going to pick him up and let him drop? Yeah? And the answer to that question is, she does pick him up and let him drop. She says, the community is also crucial because those powerful personal moments when God does speak, and those precious moments when someone finally knows deeply and truly that they are loved by God, are not enough to sustain a faith commitment by themselves. The great sociologist Emile Durkheim recognized this. Yeah, so she's saying, I'm looking at these individuals, I'm looking at how they feel, that joy, that pleasure, that wonder when God actually speaks to them, that anxiety, that worry, that pain when he doesn't. And yes, up to a point it's enough for them, but there are times when it's not enough, when God has stopped speaking to you, and then you have to turn back to community. Yeah? So she says that sociality, that community, that Durkheim put front and center of his analysis, actually comes back into view when that subjective satisfaction fades. Yeah? Does that make sense? So do you see how you can work with belief, both to say how Lerman is going beyond Durkheim, and how, notwithstanding that massive emphasis on individual experience and feeling, at the end of the day, this sociality is really important. Society does come back into view. Not to completely exclude the individual, but they both come and go. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Anything else from the book that you can think of? Is this a useful exercise? Yeah? Okay. So, help me make it more useful by coming up with more and more things from the book, because then we can work through almost all of it quite fast. Anything else from the book? Yes.
There's just a question about the voice thread thing. Like, is it kind of like a casual, like, relaying of ideas, or is it more like it doesn't have to be like kind of more formal? Like, this person said this in 1925.
I will tell you all of that.
Okay.
Once we're done with the substantive part of what you might want to say, then we'll go on to how you might want to say it. Is that reasonable? Yeah? Anything else from the book? Does anything from definitions speak to you in terms of this book? Anyone remember Tyler's definition of religion? Yeah?
Believe in a supernatural idea.
Absolutely. So Tyler says religion is belief in supernatural things. It's part of a whole host of things that he thinks are important that make a particular kind of people an identifiable group or social society, although he doesn't use that word. Okay. What might we do with this definition in relation to learning? Does it take us very far? Or does it just put it out there and say, yeah, of course, all of Lerman is about belief in supernatural things. It's not a big deal. I'm not, I can't go anywhere with this. Does that make sense? Do you see what I'm getting at? That some definitions are just so broad that actually, having put it down, you just think, yeah, what am I going to do? Yeah? So shall we jump, Tyler? Oh. Any other definition? Yeah.
I was going to ask, can you think of a way to make it relevant again? Is
Can
there
I?
a way to kind of make it relevant? Because I would agree that we can jump in, but is there a way to?
Right. So we can start off by saying that Tyler has this very broad definition and Lerman fits it. So we don't have to have any doubts that we are in the realm of religion if we follow Tyler's definition. But we might want to complexify that a bit more. Right? So then we might ask, okay, so what kinds of supernatural beings are we seeing in Lerman? And is everyone believing in them or encountering them? So what kinds of supernatural beings are we seeing in Lerman? Do you remember?
God.
We're seeing God, for sure. But what are some people seeing that are also supernatural?
Demons.
Demons. Yeah. Okay. So we might say, yeah, so, we're in the space of religion here. If we follow Tyler's definition, no problem, we have supernatural beings. And then you might want to ask, okay, we have one supernatural being which is definitely good. We love him. He loves us. Yay. Right? We have some other ones that are actually deeply problematic. And in some sense, we can say that, therefore, we might ask of Tyler's definition, should we differentiate between the ways in which individuals and that group as a whole distinguish between good and bad supernatural beings, and what are their means for working with them? So we could move quite fast beyond Tyler if we go down that route. Does that make sense? Yeah? And the fact that so few people actually see these demons tells us something, which is that this religion is really focused on love and God. Right? Or this form of Christianity is really focused on love and God. They do recognize there's a danger from these other supernatural beings because they take the Bible literally, and the Bible does have these creatures. Right? So they have to have some means of solving the problem with these kinds of creatures. So there are other practices that develop that are not necessarily central to this church, but are definitely part of it, such as exorcism. Yeah? Because the point is not just that you believe in these supernatural beings, but that you have to do something with them. Right? So again, belief comes back into focus as a really active thing. Does that make sense? So that's one way in which you can extend Tyler, if you wanted to. Yeah? Okay, any other definitions that struck you? Anyone excited about Geertz's definition? Or Durkheim's? We've already gone through Durkheim. That religion comprises of two things, belief and ritual, and the purpose of religion is to kind of categorize the world, to set apart the sacred from the profane, and to move towards the sacred. Yeah? Durkheim fits nicely, but we know from Lerman that we might just not want to focus on the group, but on individuals. Okay, so we've got Tyler, we've got Durkheim. Geertz, anyone? Anyone in love with Geertz's definition? It's a big multi-part definition. Yeah, go for it.
It's like, can you talk a lot about the rituals and how like rituals are used to kind of strengthen at times faith and mutual individuals?
Absolutely. So Dirks' definition has, like I said, many parts. Part one is his interest in symbols. Yeah? We're not seeing that much symbolic stuff here. We are seeing it. Don't get me wrong. So for instance, when the bird shits on that woman and she thinks it's a message from God telling her not to be so smart. Do you remember that bit in the book? Well, that's trade symbol, right? It's a sign from God telling her something. A symbol is just something that stands for something else. That's the basic definition of a symbol. And here we see that the ship is standing for a message from God. For most of us, we wouldn't be able to recognize that as a symbol. We'd just think, oh, pesky bird. Right? But she doesn't. Because she has trained herself to understand the world as a set of signs that are coming from God to her. Right? So in that sense, Geertz's understanding of symbols is useful here. Yeah? Geertz also talks about ritual, which is what you brought up. And for Geertz, rituals do something. Right? What rituals do is, in that moment of the ritual, they kind of heighten those feelings that you have towards whatever it is that you're worshipping, towards the feelings that it's supposed to engender. So you go to church, you have a sermon on charity, you come out, you see a homeless person, and you give them money. 3 days later, church has been and gone, you've more or less forgotten about all of that, and you walk past a homeless person and you just think, nah. Does that make sense? I mean, that's Geertz's point about religion. Yeah? About ritual, sorry. That moment, the ritual moment, or the ritual event, heightens the feelings that you're supposed to feel, that the religion wants you to feel. Right? Does that make sense? Do we see that in Lerman? How do people feel after church, after those services? Anyone at all?
I feel good.
They feel good. They feel bloody good.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So again, they are feeling that love of God. They are singing to God. They are passionately singing to God. There are these prayer warriors. They are praying. They are laying hands on each other. They're holding hands. They're raising their hands. They are dancing. It's a whole bunch of things happening, and they feel suffused with that love of God. Right? So definitely, in those services, for sure something is happening. Right? That of the kind that Geertz is describing. So that's fine. So symbols, yes. Ritual, yes. What else is Geertz telling us in that definition? Yes.
I don't know if this was him, but did he say a model 4 and a model of?
Yeah. So model of and a model for reality. Are we seeing that in the ways that they're thinking about, say, Jesus? Do you think? What is that predominant understanding about how God is towards them and the world? A single word that kind of encapsulates what they think God feels for them and the world. Love, absolutely. So in some sense, Jesus, or God, is that perfect model of love. Yeah, unconditional, absolutely loving, always there, etc. But he's also a model for how they should be. If you remember that woman who works in that, what is it called, 7-Eleven? That shop that's open all night long. Does anyone remember that vignette from the book? So she's really pissed off. She's like, I've got a degree and I'm working in this hideous shop and these people come and all they want is cat food and cheap alcohol. She's really, really pissed off. And then this woman comes in and, of course, that's exactly the kind of thing she's asking for. Cigarettes, alcohol, cat food, and she turns around and get it for her. Then she feels something on her shoulder and she hears a voice that says, I love her too. And then she thinks, oh my God, God is telling me that just as he loves me and he loves everyone, I too should love in that sort of way. I too should be accepted. Right? That's a perfect example of a model of and a model for. Does that make sense? Yeah? Does it make sense, people? You have to tell me. Because if it doesn't, then I'll have to find another example to give you. Yes?
In the first example of model of, like how is that different from model for?
Well, a model of is something that is just that thing itself, almost. Like, it's not the thing itself, but it stands for the thing itself. So, this is a model of a classroom, meaning that this kind of setup is what you would expect a classroom to look like. Does that make sense? So suppose later I was building a school somewhere or a university somewhere, and I thought in my head, I need some classrooms, what should they look like? Then I bring this classroom into my head, and then it becomes a model for me to build that classroom. Does that make sense? So essentially a model of is something that models it for you, and a model for is how you then model from that. Yeah? Any other questions? Does this make sense as an example for Geertz? Okay. So what's the next thing Geertz tells us? He tells us about symbols, he tells us about rituals, he tells us about this model of and models for. Up to this point, we're happy. Geertz is our friend. You know, he's letting us speak to Lerman, or he's letting us put Lerman into the little boxes that he has for his definition. Great. What else does Geertz say? Where is Geertz going to stumble? Dun, dun, dun. Any thoughts?
Meaning.
Hmm?
Yeah, meaning.
Meaning? Yeah, very good. Okay. So Geertz has two more connected things in the story. He's telling us about how we define religion, and that is, religion is what gives meaning. It tells us about the really real, not just what is around us, but the really real is the phrase that he uses. Fine, up to that point, we can still be happy, because the really real is God's love for you, no matter how hard and cold and awful the world feels. Right? But the final thing that's connected to meaning that Geertz tells us is that religion explains stuff that is not explicable in other ways. Right? Now, are these vineyard people looking for explanations? No. They're absolutely not looking for explanations, because in their understanding, God is beyond explanation. Right? So they're not reading the Bible to understand why the world is the way it is. They're reading the Bible to understand how they can bring God more closely into their lives. They're not asking why questions of God. Apart from when they feel He's forsaken them, why are you not coming back to me? And they redouble their efforts of praying. Right? But they are very clear that you can't. You know, God has His own reasons. They are not open for you to really even investigate. Does that make sense? Yeah? So we can say to Geertz, yes, Mr. Geertz, your symbols are fine, we get it. Yes, what you're explaining about rituals seems to work in this space. What you're saying about models of and models for seems to work as well in the Zettelbruch case. Meaning, yeah, up to a point. Explanation, this is not why they're doing religion. Does that make sense? Yeah? And this is what, so the course is very explicitly designed so that you can work from the ethnography, what this person is telling you, through ethnography with these people, to really ask, did these dead white men get it right? Or did they get bits of it right and bits of it not right? Yeah? Because that's how theory works. We're always trying to explain something, to give as good a picture as possible, and then ethnography comes along and messes it up. Always. Because people very rarely do exactly what you assume they're going to do, so that you can put them into a neat little box. Does that make sense? Yeah? So you're constantly working from the ethnography to interrogate this stuff. These concepts, these frameworks that people have spent a lot of time thinking about and worrying about. But some of them are very old. So Tyler, for instance, is 1897, 87? I think it's 97. Durkheim, well, in the French, it's about 1912. Geertz in 1966. Assad, who's saying, actually, just don't bother even trying to define religion as a particular kind of thing, is 1983. Right? Lerman is writing in 2012, and the thinking on religion and anthropology has moved on a long, long way. Right? So you can work with something like this to really push back, to take what works about that thinking and to say, actually, up to this point it works, beyond this point it doesn't work. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's the point of the whole exercise. And that's, and this is what you will do in your dissertation. So if you learn these skills, whether you do a fieldwork-based dissertation or whether you do a book-based, ethnographic, monograph-based dissertation, this is precisely what you are going to be doing when you do that big piece of work that is your own question. Yeah? So in part, we're also not just teaching you about the anthropology of religion, we're training you to think in these critical ways about the material that you encounter. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. What's the time? Do you want a 10-minute break and then we can move into the actual assessment itself, or does anyone have any other points to make from the ethnography to any of these themes? No? All of this makes sense so far? Okay, 10 minutes. I was wondering where I put the eraser. I hated that there's only one board. It's terrible. Well, look how many I brought. My house is full of pens like this because we have whiteboards everywhere to academics. And all the pens that don't work in lectures end up in the house because it's fine for close range, but far away. But yes, good point. Yes, yes. Okay, can you settle down, please? Okay, settle down, please. Okay? So many years ago, when I first started teaching, I used to bang on the lectern to get people to settle down, to say, okay, we're ready to start. And then some student complained in the feedback that it made her feel like a dog. So I still haven't found a satisfactory way to get everyone to settle down quickly, and I just stand there kind of impotently shouting, settle down please, but this is always the easiest way to do it. Okay, let's start with the revision session itself. The PowerPoints are already up on Blackboard, so you have all of this. You don't need to take notes. So listen and ask questions wherever you have one. Remember what I said? There are no silly questions. There are no pointless questions. Just ask and we'll deal with whatever it is straight away. Yeah? Okay. So that's the question. Is it clear to everyone? So where it says one central concept, the reason in my discussion I said one, maximum two, is because some of those concepts come as pairs, like practice and practicing, or mediation and material religion. Yeah? Not for any other reason. You're not going to have the time to pull in too many concepts. So don't try. What you want is depth. Depth from the ethnography, speaking in a meaningful way to whatever concept you've picked, or framework you've picked. Okay? Any questions about any of that? No? Okay. So this is what you need to do. If you're on the DAS register, you don't need to ask, you can just submit the 800-word essay. Sorry. I know that Megan Rose has already encouraged all of you to try the VoiceThread presentation. There's a number of reasons for that. One is this is actually a really key transferable skill. When you finish university, when you go out into the world, when you have to present a talk at a job interview, when you have to summarize something really quickly for a bunch of people around the room, where you have to explain your understanding clearly, without waffling, without getting distracted, without digressing, this is the kind of exercise that will really, really, really help you. Yeah? And that's why it's here as part of this course. It's very much a transferable skill. You can record your VoiceThread presentation as many times as you like until the deadline. It's open now already, the submission box. Yeah? So try it and see. Okay? And if you're satisfied whether you're on the DAS register or not, well, if you're not on the DAS register, you have to present the VoiceThread. No one else will listen to it. Your cohort won't listen to it. I will listen to it, Tom will listen to it, and Megan Rose will listen to it. That's it. Yeah? And we're the people who teach you. It is in our interests to make sure that you can do this thing that we're asking you to do well. Okay? So don't panic, just try it. Remember, all of you started speaking before you started writing. You are better at speaking because you do more of it. We all are. Right? So if you hold on to that thought, actually this is less scary than sitting down and writing because you don't write as much as you speak. So remember that and just try it. Does that make sense? Yeah? 5 to 6 minutes is not terribly long, it's long enough for what you need to do. When I first designed this assessment, I gave students 8 minutes and they waffled, many of them. So then 2 years ago I cut it down to a maximum of 6 minutes, and that seems to be the sweet spot for this particular assessment. Yeah, so you don't need more time. Spare a thought for us who are marking the work. If all of you go over by 2 minutes, that takes up that much more time for us. There's 76 of you in this course. Okay? The time limit is very carefully judged, so stick to it. You're not going to get penalized if you go over by 10 seconds or something. You will if you go over by more than half a minute. I'm telling you this just flat up front. Okay, you can do it. We know you can do it. Students in second year before you have done it. Yeah? Any questions about that? No? Okay. What else does it say? If you want to write an essay instead, and you're on the DAS register, we will know already who's on the DAS register. You don't need to email and ask for permission. Okay? You can just submit. The Turnitin inbox is also, it will be open today. Yeah? From today until the 8th of April. Okay. That's your deadline, 2 p.m. by the 8th of April. Via VoiceThread for those of you doing voice assessments, via Turnitin for those of you not. Yeah, I'll show you. Oh God, this is the student view. Where do you guys submit usually? Yeah. Okay, it's up there. Sidebar assessment. Okay, the submission inboxes are in the usual place. Yeah. Okay. Any questions about any of that? You know where to find it? You can record as many times as you like up to the deadline. So you can record, listen to yourself, ask a friend to listen for you, ask your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, whoever you feel like. Are you being clear? Are you being clear? Are you being clear? If yes, then submit and forget about it. If you think, actually I could do better, try again. But don't get caught up in that trap that answering machines sometimes put us in, where it says, if you're satisfied with your message, put the phone down. If you're not, you can re-record, and then 100 times later you're still sitting there thinking, God, my voice sounds awful. It's not about how your voice sounds, it's just about how you're answering the question. Yeah? That's all we're looking for. Is that okay? Any questions? I'll show you how to submit in a second. Okay. Now. Okay, so this is what this looks like. Okay, this is the student view, so this is what it will look like for you. This is the rubric, 5 to 6 minute VoiceThread submission. You have to have a minimum of 2 slides, one giving your student identity number and the other one giving your bibliography. Okay, so if you want to submit, click on it. Okay, VoiceThread clicks in. I've already uploaded a sample VoiceThread. Yeah, but you can always upload a new one, so you can add media, and you can just, if you've made a PowerPoint presentation, you just add it from the computer into VoiceThread. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah? So we can do that. Now, let's see, where is it? Okay, so VoiceThread will just load it up once you click. It takes a while because the University of Manchester servers are about as slow as they can be. Okay, so it's all there now. Can you see? I mean, this is the lot that I did originally yesterday when I was checking that was all working. This is the new lot. So now when you want to record, you just click on a slide. Yeah, you press continue. You have your student number here. You have your title. Okay, so if you want to record, yeah, if you're ready to record and this slide is fine, you press this plus button here, and then you can either record to video, to camera, so whoever's listening to your voice thread can see your face if you want them to. If you don't want them to see your face, you can just record to microphone. Okay? So let's say we're recording. Hello, this is a sample voice thread to show students how the recording works. Yeah? Once you've done it, it will just upload. Okay? And then you can either record more or you can save. Once it's saved, you'll see your name here. Yeah? Oh, the microphone's not working. Okay, but you get the point, right? Once you've saved it, you'll just see your initials there, and then whoever's listening will just click on that and they can hear you. Does that make sense? Yeah? Then you want to move to the next slide, you can do that and say these are my key readings. Next slide. So whatever you're doing, you can start just doing it. Okay? And as I've said here on the sample slide, this whole thing is up on Blackboard already, so you don't have to copy anything down. So essentially you can either begin with the concept that you're going to tackle, or you can begin with the ethnography. It's up to you. If you think actually the ethnography grabs me more, and I can get into the concept via the ethnography, then by all means do that. Yeah? So you can talk about, yes.
With the ethnography, obviously it's one that everyone read.
Mhm.
Should we briefly explain about
Yeah.
what it's about, who, where, and then connect it, or can we just talk about it as
No, you always start by saying, Lerman works with these people, and this is what I'm going to focus on. Always. Just so that the who, what, where, why is just in there. Because again, that's good practice for whatever you're doing later with this kind of thing. Any other questions? Yeah, so if you start with the ethnography, just go straight into it. I'm working with Tanya Lerman's ethnography when God Talks Back. She worked with Vineyards Christians in Chicago and Los Angeles, and I'm going to focus on the ways in which they use prayer to connect to God and to train themselves to experience God. Okay, therefore, I'm going to be focusing on the concept of practice or belief or whatever it is. Okay, so then tell us the bit of the ethnography that you want to really work with. Say you want to focus on symbols and gears, then you can say, okay, here's this woman, she's really pleased with herself, this bird shits on her, and she takes it as a sign for God. And that allows me to think about the way in which Geertz foregrounds symbols in his definition of religion, and you move on. Yeah? Is that reasonably clear? Okay. So each time you can record, yeah? So you can either keep your recording continuous, so you can start recording. La 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 la. La 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 la. So you can keep it continuous, or you can stop each time and move to the next slide. It's up to you. I don't mind. Whichever suits you is fine. Okay, is that clear? Yeah? And I wish the audio worked, because it would be so much nicer. Oh, it is working, but I can't get sound. Anyway, it's not like I said anything that interesting. Okay. So let's move through. Yeah, so this is just a sample PowerPoint slide. You can use it, you can modify it, you can use it as a kind of basis for your talk. It doesn't matter. It's just there for you to do whatever you want with. Okay? Right. Any questions about any of this? No? So you know how to access VoiceThread. It's really straightforward. Okay? And there is a tutorial on Blackboard. If you forget any of this, because obviously we're only human, we'll forget, there's a tutorial on the Blackboard page for the course that tells you exactly how to do this. And I also have put up which pages on that tutorial are particularly about recording assessments. So all of the resources you need are available. If you're still worried, come to an office hour, or I have 2 office hours, Mondays 3 to 4 straight after the lecture, and Fridays on Zoom 10 to 11. The links are all up on the Blackboard page, so you just pop into an office hour. Okay? Any questions about any of this? No? Okay. So let's get back to our PowerPoint. Okay. So the DAS extension does apply to this assessment. You don't need to ask. On the 8th of April, we will open another inbox for people who want to submit voice threads but have DAS, are on the DAS list so that you can use the extension. I'm not going to open it until the 8th. If you are on the DAS list and you intend to submit before the 8th, then just submit into the normal inbox. Okay, because otherwise we get a lot of confusion, people submitting in wrong inboxes and so on, which takes up a lot of time. Yeah, is that reasonable? It's at the end of the Easter break, so really you can just finish it off over the Easter break and not worry about it once teaching starts again. Okay, I've explained all of this. Any questions, just stop me, okay? Okay. Okay. So how do you reference reading? Someone asked this question earlier. You just put up a little bibliography right up front. Okay? If there are particular pages that you worked with, because obviously, even though most of you have read the whole book, I know some of you haven't, it doesn't matter because you're not going to be working with the whole book. Okay? So if you've just literally worked with chapter 2, the power of prayer or whatever it's called, then you just put those page numbers in and you're fine. Yeah? You don't need to keep, chapter 2 is that you got. You don't need to keep saying as you're speaking, this is on page X, Y, and Z. Okay? Just tell me where it is in that book and you're fine. Okay? So unless you're quoting on a slide, you don't need to give page numbers. If you're quoting on a slide, we want page numbers so that we can follow up that quote. Okay, you give references, including page numbers, for 2 reasons. One is so that whoever is reading or listening to your work can make sure that you've got it right. People miss that a lot, and sometimes a quote makes no sense because there is a not there, shouldn't be there, therefore negating the sentence, and then as you're reading, you're thinking that can't be right. Let me go back to the original quote. Okay? So one is for traceability. The other one is just to give credit where credit is due. Someone else has done this work. Someone else has had these ideas. And you are learning from them. So you're just giving them credits. Yeah, those are the only 2 reasons for quoting. Whenever you quote, therefore we want that page number for traceability and to make sure that whoever you're quoting, you quoted them correctly. Yeah?
Does it matter that the page numbers on the PDF don't match up to the book?
It doesn't matter. We've got both. Any other questions? Okay. So you must be precise. You must say exactly what you mean. And it must be accurate in terms of what you're saying. But it doesn't need to be formal. You can just say what you want to say. If you want to say that woman who was working in that 7-Eleven was really pissed off, and then God spoke to her and she realized that what she should be feeling towards the world is what God feels towards her and the world. And that shows us something about model of and model form. That's fine. It really doesn't matter. You just need to say what you need to say. Okay? Active voice, just say it. You don't have the time to do passive voice, to say, in this presentation we will be doing na 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 na. Just say what you want to say. Yeah? Don't panic. Remember, this is what you do normally in your life. And all we want from you is that same clarity that you normally use and have in speech to come through into your academic work. Okay? Any questions? It has to be precise and it has to be accurate. Those are the only two things we want. Yeah? And it has to answer the question. Okay. So when you speak, you're speaking really very simply, right? So I've given you two examples here. So I'm going to draw on Lerman's ethnography to ask if Durkheim was right when he said we should focus on the social function of religion rather than on subjective experience. In fact, what Lerman shows us is that both are important. Yeah? So very simple, very straightforward, just say what you want to say. Any questions about any of this? No? All clear? Okay. Okay, essentially this is the whole point of this exercise. Yeah? It's to teach you how to speak really clearly on the basis of your reading and your understanding. That's it. You will all go on after this almost certainly to graduate level jobs where this skill is really, really, really crucial. So you may as well start getting it as quickly as you can. Yeah? Any questions about any of this? No? Okay. Okay. So we always get asked questions about quotes, whether it's for this kind of exercise or whether it's for your essays. So I'm just going to quickly tell you some stuff about quotes that might be useful. Well, that will be useful for this exercise for sure, but maybe generally useful as well on your writing. Okay, so there's three kinds of quotes. Right? The first one is ethnographic quotes. We see a lot of ethnographic quotes in this book, where people are telling Lerman, this is how I feel, this is how God speaks to me, this is how I feel when I feel dry, and so on. So that's where research participants are saying something that is reproduced in the text. Okay? That's an ethnographic quote. The second one is where you are quoting from the author's work. So Lerman is saying something and you think, she's saying it very nicely, I don't think I can say it better than her, so I'm just going to quote her. Okay? The second kind of quote you should use sparingly. Your whole work should not be filled with someone else's words. It should be your words, perhaps punctuated by their words when necessary. And the third is where the author is quoting another scholar. Okay? Those are the three kinds of quotes that we normally see. Do you recognize that? Can anyone think about any other kinds of quotes that you might use? No? Okay. So if we take each in turn, yeah? When you're building up an argument, it's useful to think about ethnographic quotes in two ways. One is when lots of people are saying the same kind of thing. Okay? That really helps you build up an argument to say that, broadly speaking, this is how many people feel about this thing. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah? The other is when lots of people are saying one kind of thing and someone else is saying something that's actually quite different. Okay? That allows you to move your argument in another direction, what we might call the yes, but someone else is saying something different, let's think about that. Does that make sense? Yeah? So these allow you to advance your argument. They provide evidence for why you are arguing what you are arguing. Yeah? Okay. So let's look at an example of how you might work with this kind of ethnographic quote. So you might, for instance, in this assessment, just put them on a slide and talk around them. Yeah? So I've put a bunch here about how people experience God or sense God. And you can see that there's a huge diversity in what exactly they're sensing. So one woman says, I get a lot of images. Someone else says, I rarely get images, I get sensations. It's like the experience of a bird flying rather than seeing a bird flying. Someone else says, I can definitely hear him, it was pretty loud and clear. Yet another person also is hearing God. He just puts the word in your mind and you hear the word no, is what she says. Someone else says, you feel a kind of click in your heart. Like you've been thinking about something, you've been worrying about something and God hasn't responded. And then later you're reading something or someone is telling you something and it suddenly clicks, you feel a click in your heart. Yeah? So these are all ethnographic quotes and they all tell us something, which is that these people are all experiencing God, but they experience God in different ways. He doesn't speak to them all in the same way. Right? So these quotes allow you to make that point really quickly from the ethnography. Does that make sense? Yeah? It's really quick to do it this way. So despite all this difference, you might be arguing, that people spend a lot of time actually talking to each other, trying to work out, was that God? Was that God? Was that God? Okay? And that's where the collective really comes into focus. Even though each person is experiencing God individually in a different way to someone else, they can still talk about that experience together to work out, is this God? Yeah? Okay? So then you might want to say, so the collective is actually pretty supportive. They spend a lot of time with each other trying to figure out, is this God? And then you might want your yes but move, which is to say that doesn't mean they all believe that the other person is really hearing God. And you can move to an example. For example, Elaine, who says she's hearing God all the time, and people are just like, nah, not possible. She's just claiming too much. Yeah? So the collective is supportive, but it is also evaluative. Does that make sense? In terms of how you would build up an argument? Yeah? Okay. So whatever is in red is essentially what you might be saying. Yeah? And whatever is in black is what you might be putting on the slide. Any questions? Yeah.
So would it just be enough to put quotes on the slides and not actually read them out?
No, why would you waste time? It's there. So really, if you use your slides cleverly enough, you can double your time. I'm not suggesting that you therefore have 30,000 slides, but you know, this allows you to actually get quite a lot in and give your evidence just on the slide and speak around it. You have to speak around it, but yeah? Any other questions? No? Okay. So this is all what you might speak. And this will cover about 2 minutes or thereabouts. Yeah? Okay. Now, sometimes you might want to quote the author, sometimes you might want to quote Lerman, for instance. Okay? And that's fine, but you should be very careful about why you are quoting an author. Now, there might be places where you think, actually, she has said it so perfectly that I don't think I can say it better. Right? And then you might think, okay, I'll just put that in as a quote. And that's fine. But then the reason it works in her book is because she spent a lot of time getting to that sentence so that it makes sense to you. So you have to put in work to contextualize that quote, to make it make sense out of that bigger context from which you've taken it. Does that make sense? Yeah? Sometimes, and this happens very often, students quote because they don't understand something. And they think, if I just stick a quote in, that'll do. It never works. I can guarantee you that. Yeah? Because every quote that you put in has to have that work around it for it to make sense. So if you're quoting because you didn't understand, you're better off putting in the time to understand. Because you're not going to be able to put in that work to make that quote make sense. Is that reasonable? Yeah? So when you want to quote an author, ask yourself, am I quoting this person because actually she has said it so succinctly that I can't improve on it, but I have to explain what that means really, from what I've understood? Or ask yourself, am I doing it because I didn't understand and this is just like a filler? If it's the latter, please don't do it. You are wasting your time, you are losing points. You really are. Okay, so be strict with yourself about when you quote authors. Any questions about that? No? Okay. So I'm not saying you should never quote. You know, it makes perfect sense if you're going to work with Geertz's definition to put that definition up. Because it's succinct, it tells very clearly what the man wants to convey. And if you were to rewrite that and re-paraphrase that, it would take you a lot more words. Right? But whatever you say or whatever you write has to show that you've understood all the various moving parts of that definition. Just putting that quote in does not indicate understanding. Yeah? So the point is not don't ever quote, but when you quote, quote for a reason and make sure it works. Okay? Any questions about that? No? Okay. Right. So you'll see that Lerman actually barely quotes other scholars. She spends a lot of time explaining what they're saying, but she doesn't really quote them. The only things she quotes are the evangelical texts and her own ethnographic participants. She's not really quoting other authors. So we won't worry too much about this kind of quote right now, but we'll talk about it in your final essay where you'll see a lot more of this kind of quote. Is that okay? Yeah? Okay. Right. So back to the question, you'll see that it has two parts, right? The first part is asking you, how does Lerman's book allow you to understand a particular framework or concept, or the battle about definitions in anthropology? And the second part asks you, okay, how does it allow you to work with these concepts, either to agree with them, or to refine them, or to say, actually, we should just abandon this way of thinking? So there's two parts. And that's what, whenever you see a question that says critically discuss, critically engage, it's the second part, that's the critical aspect. Okay? So what is meant by critical, really, is that you're asked to think about what you're reading and learning, and to say, yes, this works, or this kind of works up to this point, but beyond this point it doesn't work for these reasons, so here's another way of thinking about it. Or, no, it doesn't work at all for these reasons. That's what critically engage means. It doesn't mean criticize. It means think about it and evaluate it. Yeah? That's what the second part of that question is really asking you to do. Does that make sense? Yeah? Any questions? No? Okay. This is why usually when you write essays or when you make arguments, you very rarely expect to hear the word I believe. What you expect to hear is I argue that. Right? Because critique is not a matter of belief. Critique is a matter of argument. Yeah? Does that make sense? Okay. So there are lots and lots of ways of structuring any given presentation or essay or anything. We're just going to talk about presentations here. So I'm going to give you two examples. You can use either, you can use some other one entirely that's not in these two examples. It's up to you. But these are just there for you to think about and perhaps work with. Okay? So in structure one, you can begin with Lerman's ethnography. You can say, okay, here's this bit in Lerman's ethnography. That's really interesting for these reasons. Let's think about it and move on from there. So move outwards from Lerman's ethnography. Yeah? That's structure one. So when I was showing you how to work with ethnographic quotes, that's roughly the structure I was using. Do you recognize that? Yeah? We can go back. Okay? So here I'm beginning with Lerman. Right? And I'm ending up with Durkheim. Right? So that's the first structure that we have. Okay, that's an example of structure one. Okay. In structure 2, you can go the other way around. You can start with that particular concept or definition or framework, whatever it is, explain it. You have to explain it. So suppose you were working with mediation, you would say, mediation is the term used to describe the ways in which people build bridges between the here and now, themselves, and that which lies beyond, the transcendental. And lots of different materials can be deployed in mediation. In Lerman, these include prayer, the Bible, their own bodies, and so on. Yeah? So you have to explain that concept as clearly as you can. And then you turn to the ethnography to either refine it or refute it, or build on it. Okay? You build on it if you agree, and you say, this works, let's look at some cases from Lerman to show how it works and nuance them a bit further. You refine it by saying, as we did with Geertz, you can say, well, the symbol stuff works, the ritual stuff works, the model of, model for stuff works, the meaning works up to a point, the seeking for explanation now. Yeah, that's refining it. That's saying we don't need that final bit. Okay? Or you might refute it. You might say, actually, let's take Tyler's definition. It's too broad. It doesn't really allow me to do that much more than just say, yes, this is a religion because there's belief in supernatural beings. So it's so broad that it's kind of useless. Although, as we work, we did try and make sense of it. So it's possible to do either. Yeah? Any questions? Okay. So here's an example of the second structure. Right? So you can begin with, say, Durkheim's understanding of religion and the way in which he ties it to society and to orderly social reproduction, i.e. how a society reproduces itself through these collective beliefs and rites. Okay? You then question a part of his understanding, which is an kind of exclusive focus on society and on the collective, and you say, but actually society is made up of people, and what we see in Lerman is people having experiences that are profoundly meaningful to them, that keep them part of this church. So we can't just neglect the individual. Right? And then you give cases from Lerman's book showing how individuals feel and experience God and how it provides them so much emotional satisfaction that they remain in the church. Okay? Does that make sense for the second structure? So you can start wherever you like. Yeah? Wherever you start, your discussion of the ethnographies have to be clear, they have to be precise, they have to be detailed enough, but not too detailed, you don't have the time. If you start with the concepts, you have to explain it, and it has to make sense. Yeah? And then you move on. Any questions? It's really not difficult, I promise you. So one question that often comes up is how much detail is enough detail? Yeah? There's a lot of detail in the book. It's a book. It's a monograph. She's spending a lot of time with these people. She's telling you loads and loads and loads of stuff about them. You cannot possibly work with all of that stuff in the time that you have. And you certainly don't want to work with all of that stuff to answer the question. Right? So let's try a little exercise. Yeah? Okay. It's a really grey day. You're walking down Oxford Street. You've just crossed that big junction. You're walking along. And there's a woman in front of you. And she's wearing the brightest, happiest looking coat in a lovely yellow color. She's just standing out on this grey day because this yellow is so wonderfully vivid. And you're looking at her, you're walking behind her, you're crossing this big road, you're looking at her and you're thinking, wow, what a beautiful color. I wish I had a coat like that. Then you're looking at her a bit more and you're thinking, oh, but her shoes and her trousers, they really don't go with that coat. And that black hat as well, she looks like a bumblebee. I would never wear black with that yellow. Looks dreadful. Oh, I wish she was wearing another color. What color would work? Maybe grey, maybe, I don't know. You're musing, you're walking along, thinking about this coat, thinking about can I get a coat like that, etc., etc. And then as the woman is walking, someone comes in the opposite direction and they grab her bag and they push her down and they run off. Yeah? She falls on the ground, you rush over to help her, she starts having a seizure. Okay? You phone the ambulance, you phone 999. What do you say to them? What do you say? You're on the phone to 999. Come on, this is a life or death situation, people. What do you say? You phone the ambulance. She's fallen, you've just crossed that big road on Oxford Street, Oxford Road, whatever it is. You're in front of the co-op. She's falling. She's there. She's having a seizure. You're phoning. What are you going to say? Seriously? None of you know what you would say to that ambulance, to 999?
A woman is having a seizure. Here's where we are.
Absolutely. That's it. That's what I mean by what is the detail that you need in order to do the job that you have to do. The yellow coat, the fact that she looks like a bumblebee, that you would like a coat like that, everything becomes irrelevant. Yeah? All that ambulance person needs to know, all that person on the other end of the line on 999 needs to know is, there's a woman having a seizure, she's in front of the cooperative on Oxford Road, in Manchester. If you know the postcode, great, M13 9PL. If you don't, it doesn't matter because you've given them a reasonably good idea. And you might turn around and say, actually, it's the junction between Booth Street or Upper Brook Street and Oxford Road. That's all that you need to, that's all the detail that's required. Does that make sense? Yeah? Always ask yourself, even though you've got a whole book with tons of ethnography, to answer that question that you have chosen to answer, what is the level of detail that your reader or listener absolutely needs to have? What is absolute dross, however interesting, however beautiful that yellow coat is, however nice it is that Lerman's research participants are having such a wonderful time with having dinner with God, if it doesn't fit that answer that you want to give, it's irrelevant detail. Does that make sense? Yeah? It's really, and this is going to be the case for any essay you write, any work that you present. There's always going to be a mass of detail. And part of the skill, part of what you're being assessed on, is how do you compress that detail to the thing that you need to answer that question. Yeah? There is nothing else that is required. Okay? Any questions about that? Does that clarify about detail? Because you will have to select. You don't have any choice but to select. So ask yourself, what do I need to select to make that answer that I want to make, based on the stuff that I know? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, this is the final point, the point that I made to you earlier. Always check, is that person the author that you want to work with in the index? If they are, that already gives you a route into that answer. Okay? So for instance, Durkheim is mentioned once, like I said, on page 279. Quickly check 279 if you want to work with Durkheim in relation to Lerman. If you want to work with Geertz, you'll see that Geertz is mentioned twice, Tyler is mentioned once. Yeah? So again, if you want to work with Tyler, check what Lerman is saying, because that allows you to frame your own response. Okay, similarly with Geertz, Assad, Rappaport, they're not mentioned at all. So then you have to decide, why do I think these people are who I want to use to speak with? Okay? So that is also another kind of choice. But if you're making the choice about Durkheim or Geertz or Tyler, then definitely look at them. Yeah? Okay. I'm going to play you a sample of a voice thread. We have exactly the right amount of time for that. So this is from 2021, I think, and so it was longer, as I told you. Those were 8 minutes long. Okay, the student got a first for this voice thread. You'll see she's speaking to camera. Oh God, the sound. Tom, do you know anything about sound here? Oh, there it is. Is that sound?
Oh yeah.
Thank you. Okay, it's a good thing you came.
Exactly, this is what I came for. Come on. Okay, it should be. Check this. Sorry. Display audio. It should be the right one.
Play it and see.
Yeah.
or comments having listened to this? So you can see how she's fairly straightforward in her speech, right? She's just telling you, okay, this is believing self stuff, this is how it works, it takes work, and the work that I'm going to focus on is the work of knowing that God loves you and learning to pay attention so that you can feel that love. Finished. Yeah? Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was fine. It took a little while to warm up, but it worked. Hello.
I tried to access the links on my laptop, and I don't know, maybe it's a me problem, but when I try to access it, I'll go through it.
Yeah, there's two voice threads. One of them, the link seems to be broken. Yeah. The other one is the one that I used. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna take it off at the end of the day. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So one of those links. No. It's just I think because that voice thread was from 3 years ago, so that link was broken for some reason.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. I just wanted to
No
check.
problem.
Thank you.
But yeah, I'll take that down today because I don't want to leave the students' work up for too long. Thank you. Sorry? Yes. I've got Dick Werbner coming to discuss this.